My name is Beulah, and at 54 years old, I thought I knew my son better than anyone in this world. We had been through everything together, just the two of us, and I trusted him completely. But last Tuesday morning, when I opened the security camera app on my phone and saw what Marcus had been doing in my bedroom, everything I believed about our relationship shattered in an instant. Before I share what happened next, I would love to know where you are watching from. Please hit that like button if you have ever had your trust broken by someone you love, and make sure to subscribe because this story will stay with you long after it ends. Now, let me take you back to where it all began, to the life I thought was perfect. I have worked as a nurse at Memorial Hospital for 30 years. The night shifts, the double shifts. The holidays I spent away from home, all of it was for Marcus. His father left when Marcus was only 7, and from that moment on, it became just the two of us against the world. I remember those early years so clearly. I would come home exhausted after a 12-hour shift, my feet aching, my back sore. But I would still make sure Marcus had a hot breakfast before school. I packed his lunches with care, wrote little notes on napkins telling him I loved him, attended every parent-teacher conference even when I could barely keep my eyes open. Money was always tight. There were months when I had to choose between paying the electric bill on time or buying Marcus new shoes for school. I chose the shoes. I always chose whatever Marcus needed. I worked extra shifts, picked up overtime whenever I could, and slowly, painfully, we built a life. I saved every penny I could spare, putting money aside for his college fund for his future. When Marcus graduated high school with honors, I cried tears of joy. When he got accepted to State University, I felt like every sacrifice had been worth it. Marcus was a good student, a kind boy, who grew into a thoughtful young man. He studied business administration, made the dean's list twice, and had a small group of close friends. During his college years, he would call me every Sunday evening without fail. We would talk for an hour or more about his classes, his plans, his dreams. He wanted to work in marketing. He told me to build a career that would make me proud. And I was proud, so incredibly proud. After graduation 3 months ago, Marcus moved back home. I did not mind at all. In fact, I welcomed it. Our little house in the suburbs felt warm and complete with him there. He was actively looking for jobs, sending out applications every day, going to interviews. The job market was tough, he explained, but he was confident something would come through soon. In the meantime, he helped around the house. He would vacuum the living room, take out the trash, run errands to the grocery store. We would sit together in the evenings, watching television, talking about our days. It felt comfortable, safe, like the family unit we had always been. 6 months earlier, our neighborhood had experienced a string of burglaries. The house 3 doors down was broken into while the family was on vacation. They lost jewelry, electronics, cash. My neighbor across the street, Mrs. Patterson, had her back window smashed one Tuesday afternoon. The police increased patrols, but the incidents continued. I started feeling anxious every time I left for my night shifts at the hospital. Marcus would be home alone, asleep, vulnerable. What if someone broke in? What if something happened to my boy? That worry led me to install security cameras. I researched different systems, read reviews, and finally settled on a wireless setup with 3 cameras. One pointed at the front door, capturing anyone who approached the house. Another covered the living room and kitchen area. The third I installed in my bedroom. That might seem unusual to some people, but I kept important things in there. My late mother's jewelry, some savings in cash tucked in a small lockbox, documents, family heirlooms. If someone broke in, my bedroom would likely be their target. I explained the cameras to Marcus, showed him where they were positioned, how they worked. He understood completely. In fact, he seemed relieved. He told me it was a smart decision, that he would feel safer too, knowing we had that extra security. I showed him how to access the camera feed through the app on his phone in case of emergency. We were on the same page, or so I thought. Everything worked perfectly for months. The cameras gave me peace of mind. I could check them from work during my breaks, see that everything at home was quiet and secure. Then, about 3 weeks ago, the bedroom camera stopped working. The app showed it as offline. I assumed the battery died or perhaps there was a connection issue. I meant to call the technician, but work became hectic. We were short staffed at the hospital, and I was pulling double shifts. Days blurred together in a haze of exhaustion and responsibility. Finally, last week, I managed to schedule a repair appointment. The technician came on Thursday afternoon while I was at work. Marcus was home, let him in, showed him to my bedroom. The technician called me later to confirm the repair was complete. It had been a simple wiring issue. He said, all fixed, now the camera was working perfectly. I thanked him, relieved to have that task checked off my list. I meant to tell Marcus that evening that the camera was operational again, but I came home so tired and he was already asleep. The next morning, I left for work early. The day after that, I forgot entirely. It simply slipped my mind. Life continued in its normal rhythm. I worked, my shifts, came home, made dinner, spent quiet evenings with my son. Marcus seemed his usual self, pleasant, helpful, maybe a little quieter than normal. But I attributed that to stress about job hunting. I had no reason to suspect anything was wrong. Our home felt peaceful, safe. I looked at my son and saw the boy I had raised, the young man I trusted with my whole heart. I had no idea that trust was already broken, had been broken for weeks, perhaps longer. I had no idea what the camera had been recording in my absence. It started with something small, so small I almost dismissed it. One morning about 10 days ago, I needed some cash for a work fundraiser. We were collecting money for a colleague whose house had been damaged in a fire, and I wanted to contribute. I keep a lockbox in my bedroom closet. Nothing fancy, just a simple metal box with a combination lock. Inside, I keep emergency money, usually a few $100s, sometimes more, if I have been saving up for something specific. I opened the box that morning and counted the bills. Something felt off. I could have sworn I had $320 in there. I distinctly remembered adding a $20 bill from my last paycheck. But when I counted, I found only $270, $50 short. I stood there in my closet, recounting, thinking maybe I miscounted the first time. But no, it was definitely less than I remembered. My first thought was that I must have taken it out and forgotten. Maybe I spent it at the grocery store or put it toward a bill and the memory just slipped away. I am 54 years old after all, and between work stress and lack of sleep, my memory is not what it used to be. I convinced myself that was the explanation. I took the $40 I needed for the fundraiser and put the box back, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling in my stomach. Over the next few days, I noticed Marcus seemed different. Not dramatically so, just subtle shifts in his behavior. He spent more time in his room with the door closed. When I knocked to ask if he wanted dinner, he would open the door only partway, speak to me through the gap, then close it again quickly. Before, he used to leave his door open, music playing, happy to chat whenever I passed by. Now there was distance. He was on his phone, constantly texting, checking something. When I walked into a room, he would quickly turn the screen away or slip the phone into his pocket. If it rang, he would glance at the caller ID, then step outside or go to his room to answer. I asked him once if everything was okay, if there was anything he wanted to talk about. He smiled, that same smile I had known since he was a child, and said everything was fine, just stressed about job applications, waiting to hear back from companies. I believed him. Why would I not? He was my son. We did not keep secrets from each other. But the feeling persisted, a tiny voice in the back of my mind whispering that something was not right. I tried to ignore it, told myself I was being paranoid, that the stress of work was making me imagine problems where none existed. Then a few days later, I went to my jewelry box. My mother had left me a few pieces when she passed away 15 years ago. Nothing extraordinarily valuable in monetary terms, but priceless to me. A gold necklace with a small emerald pendant that my father had given her on their 20th anniversary. A pair of pearl earrings she wore to my high school graduation. A delicate bracelet with tiny charms, each one representing a special moment in her life. I kept these treasures in a velvet-lined box on my dresser, and I looked at them sometimes when I missed her running my fingers over the cool metal, remembering her voice, her laugh, her love. That afternoon, I opened the box to look at the necklace. I wanted to wear it to work under my scrubs, to feel close to her during a difficult shift. But when I opened the box, everything looked disturbed. The necklace was not laid out the way I always left it, carefully draped across the velvet. It was bunched to one side. The earrings were in the wrong compartment. The bracelet was tangled. My heart started beating faster. I checked carefully to make sure nothing was missing. Everything was still there, but someone had definitely been in this box. Someone had touched my mother's jewelry. I stood in my bedroom looking around, trying to make sense of it. Marcus was the only other person who lived here. But why would he go through my jewelry box? It made no sense. I picked up the phone and called my best friend Diane. We had worked together at the hospital for 20 years before she retired last year. She knew me better than anyone, had supported me through the divorce, through the hard years of single motherhood, through everything. I told her about the money, about the jewelry box, about Marcus's strange behavior. As I spoke, I heard how it sounded, how I was essentially accusing my own son of something terrible. Part of me felt guilty, even voicing these suspicions. Diane listened, without interrupting the way she always did. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said gently that I should keep observing, that maybe there was a reasonable explanation, but that I should also trust my instincts. She reminded me that people we love can still disappoint us, that trust should not mean ignoring warning signs. Her words stayed with me long after we hung up. That night I barely slept. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me. I heard Marcus moving around in his room, the soft creak of floorboards, the sound of his door opening and closing. I wondered what he was doing, whether my suspicions were justified, or whether I was losing my mind, becoming a paranoid mother who could not let her adult son have any privacy. A week passed. I tried to put it out of my mind, to focus on work, to trust my son the way I always had. Then it happened again, and this time there was no denying it. I had counted the money in my lockbox, carefully written down the exact amount in a small notebook I kept in my nightstand. $220. I recorded the date and the amount, feeling slightly foolish for doing so, but needing to know for sure whether I was imagining things. I checked it every couple of days, just glancing at the notebook to confirm my memory was accurate. 3 days later, I opened the box again. $170. $50 gone. I checked my notebook. I had not taken any money out. I had not touched the box except to verify the amount. Someone else had opened it. Someone else had taken that money. And the only other person with access to my bedroom was Marcus. I sat on the edge of my bed, the lockbox open on my lap, feeling like the floor had dropped out from under me. My hands were shaking. I counted the money 3 times, hoping I had made a mistake, but the amount stayed the same. $50 gone. It was not about the money itself. $50 I could spare. What shattered me was what it meant. My son, the boy I had sacrificed everything for, was stealing from me. The rational part of my brain tried to find other explanations. Maybe he borrowed it and planned to pay it back, was too embarrassed to ask directly. Maybe there was an emergency I did not know about. But if that were true, why not just tell me? We had always been honest with each other. At least I thought we had. I started paying closer attention to Marcus over the next few days. I watched him when he thought I was not looking. I noticed things I had overlooked before. How he always seemed to have cash for takeout, for coffee with friends, for new clothes. He had not had a job in months, had no income, yet he was spending money regularly. Where was it coming from? The obvious answer turned my stomach. His phone rang more frequently, and he always left the room to answer. Once I walked past his bedroom door and heard him talking quietly to someone. I could not make out the words, but the tone was secretive, almost guilty. When he emerged a few minutes later and saw me in the hallway, He jumped, startled, then recovered quickly and smiled. I asked who he had been talking to. He said a friend, someone from college, no one I knew. Another lie I suspected, though I could not prove it. The distance between us grew. Dinners became quiet affairs. I would ask about his day, his job search, and he would give short, vague answers. The easy conversation we used to share evaporated, replaced by awkward silences and forced pleasantries. I missed my son, missed the closeness we had always had, but I did not know how to bridge the gap that was widening between us. One sleepless night, I lay in bed, turning everything over in my mind. The missing money, the disturbed jewelry, Marcus's secretive behavior, his evasiveness. I tried to think of a way to know for sure, to confirm or disprove my suspicions without directly accusing him. Then it hit me. The camera. The security camera in my bedroom, the one that had been repaired last week. The one I had forgotten to tell Marcus was working again. My heart started pounding. If Marcus had been in my room, if he had opened the lockbox or the jewelry box, the camera would have recorded it. I would have proof one way or another. I would know the truth. Part of me desperately wanted to be wrong, to find out that I had been paranoid, that Marcus was innocent, that our relationship was still intact. But another part of me, the part that had noticed all the signs, already knew what I would find. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, my hand trembling. The camera app was right there, just a few taps away. I could check the recordings right now, see what had happened in my room over the past week. But I hesitated. Was this a violation of Marcus's privacy? He was my son, 23 years old and adult. Did I have the right to spy on him? But then again, this was my room, my camera, my property. And if he had been stealing from me, did privacy even matter anymore? I spent the rest of the night wrestling with the decision. By the time the sun started to rise, painting the sky outside my window in shades of pink and gold, I had made up my mind. I had to know. I could not continue living with this doubt, this suspicion eating away at me. I needed the truth, whatever it was. Marcus left the house that morning around 10. He said he was meeting a friend for coffee, would be back later. I watched from the living room window as his car pulled out of the driveway and disappeared down the street. Then I was alone. The house fell silent around me, that particular quiet that feels almost heavy. I sat down on the couch, took a deep breath, and opened the camera app on my phone. The interface showed all three cameras: front door, living room, bedroom. I selected the bedroom camera and scrolled back through the recordings. My finger hovered over the screen for a moment. My last chance to turn back, to choose ignorance, to preserve whatever illusion of trust remained. But I could not. I had to know. I pressed play. The first recording I watched was from 4 days ago, Tuesday afternoon. I had been at work a long shift that did not end until 11 that night. The video showed my empty bedroom, sunlight streaming through the window, my bed neatly made, everything exactly as I had left it that morning. I fast-forwarded, watching the light change as hours passed, afternoon turning to evening, shadows lengthening across the floor. Then, at 4:37 in the afternoon, the door opened. My breath caught in my throat. Marcus walked in. He glanced around the room, and something about his body language made my skin crawl. He was cautious, furtive, checking over his shoulder before stepping fully inside. This was not the casual walk of someone entering a room innocently. This was someone who knew he should not be there, someone who was being deliberate, careful. I watched, unable to look away, as my son crossed to my closet. He opened the door, knelt down, and pulled out the lockbox. He knew exactly where it was, exactly what he was looking for. There was no hesitation, no searching. He had done this before, I realized, with a sickening certainty. This was routine for him. He held the lockbox in his hands, entered the combination. I felt like I was watching from outside my own body, like this could not be real, could not be happening. The box opened. Marcus looked inside, then reached in and pulled out bills. I could see them clearly in the video, $20 bills. He counted them, took $360 and put them in his pocket. Then he closed the box, spun the combination lock, and returned it to the closet exactly where it had been. He stood up, brushed off his knees, looked around the room one more time to make sure everything was in place and left. The whole thing took less than 3 minutes. 3 minutes to shatter 23 years of trust. I sat frozen on my couch, phone in my hand, staring at the screen, even though the recording had moved on, showing my empty bedroom once again. My son had stolen from me. There was no ambiguity, no room for misinterpretation. I had just watched him do it. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. Part of me wanted to stop there to not watch anymore, but I could not. I had to know how many times this had happened, how long he had been doing this. I scrolled back, further selected another date. 5 days ago, Monday. I fast-forwarded through the recording, and there it was again. Marcus entering my room, going straight to the lockbox, taking money. This time he took two 20s, $40. I went back further. 6 days, same thing. 10 days, same thing. Over and over I watched my son enter my bedroom, open my lockbox, and steal from me. Each recording felt like another stab to the heart. How long had this been going on? How much had he taken? Why did he need the money? Why could he not just ask me? I would have given him anything. He knew that. I had always given him everything. Then I found a recording that made everything so much worse. It was from 8 days ago, a Saturday afternoon. Marcus entered my room, but this time he was not alone. He had someone with him, a young man I vaguely recognized. Kyle, one of his friends from college. They walked in laughing, completely at ease, as if they had every right to be there. Marcus pointed to my bed, and Kyle sat down on it, bouncing, slightly grinning. I turned up the volume on my phone. The camera had audio. I could hear their voices, muffled, but clear enough. Marcus walked to the closet, pulled out the lockbox. Kyle watched, eyebrows raised. "Your mom does not know?" Kyle asked. Even through the phone speaker, I could hear the disbelief in his voice. Marcus laughed. Actually laughed. He opened the lockbox and pulled out a handful of bills, waving them like a prize. "She has no idea. She trusts me too much. It is almost too easy." The words hit me like a physical blow. She trusts me too much. It is almost too easy. He was not even remorseful. He was proud of himself, bragging about deceiving me. Kyle shook his head, still grinning. "How much are you going to take?" Marcus counted the bills, his expression casual, unbothered. "Just enough to have fun for a while, you know. Buy some stuff, go out, live a little. I will get a job eventually. But for now, this works." He shrugged, as if stealing from his mother was a perfectly reasonable temporary solution to unemployment. "What if she figures it out?" Kyle asked. Marcus put the money in his pocket, closed the lockbox, returned it to the closet. He turned to face Kyle, and the smile on his face made me want to scream. "She will not. She works all the time, comes home exhausted, barely notices anything. And even if she did notice money missing, she would never suspect me. I am her perfect son, remember?" He said it mockingly, cruelly mimicking what I must have said about him 1,000 times to friends, to colleagues, to anyone who would listen. They left the room after that, their laughter fading down the hallway. The camera showed my empty bedroom again. I sat staring at the screen, tears streaming down my face. I could not wipe them away fast enough. They kept coming, hot and bitter, blurring my vision. This was not just theft. This was betrayal on a level I could not have imagined. My son, the child I had devoted my entire life to, was not only stealing from me, but mocking me for being foolish enough to trust him. He was using my love against me, weaponizing the faith I had in him. Every sacrifice I had made, every extra shift I had worked, every meal I had skipped, to make sure he had enough, all of it meant nothing to him. I was just an easy mark, a woman too blind and too devoted to see what was right in front of her face. I could not watch anymore. I closed the app and dropped my phone on the couch beside me. I drew my knees up to my chest, wrapped my arms around them, and sobbed. Deep, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere so wounded I did not know how I would ever recover. The foundation of my world, the relationship I had built my entire adult life around, had crumbled to dust. I did not know who Marcus was anymore. Worse, I did not know if I had ever known him at all. I do not know how long I sat there crying. Eventually, the tears slowed, then stopped, leaving me hollow and exhausted. My face felt swollen, my eyes raw. I stood up on shaky legs and walked to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, looked at myself in the mirror. I looked older than I had that morning, worn down, defeated. But underneath the pain, something else was beginning to stir. Anger. I had every right to be angry. Marcus had stolen from me, lied to me, laughed at my trust. He had violated my home, my privacy, my love. And he had done it repeatedly without remorse, without guilt. The more I thought about it, the more that anger grew, burning away, some of the hurt hardening into resolve. I went back to the living room, picked up my phone, and took screenshots of several video clips. I saved them carefully, made sure they were clear, that the timestamps were visible. This was evidence. I would need it. Then I sat down and tried to think clearly about what to do next. Confronting Marcus was inevitable. I could not let this continue, could not pretend I did not know. But I also could not just let him apologize and move on as if nothing had happened. This was not a small mistake, not a momentary lapse in judgment. This was calculated, ongoing theft. He had betrayed my trust in the most fundamental way. There had to be consequences. I thought about calling Diane, but I already knew what she would say. She would tell me I had to stand up for myself, set boundaries, demand accountability. She would be right. For too long, I had equated loving Marcus with giving him everything, protecting him from consequences, smoothing his path. But that was not love. That was enabling. And it had created a young man who thought he could take whatever he wanted from the person who loved him most without facing any repercussions. That had to end. Today, I printed out several of the screenshots, clear images of Marcus in my room, at my lockbox, money in his hand. I laid them on the kitchen table. Then I sat down and waited. My hands were folded in front of me, my back straight. I felt calm now, cold and clear-headed. The crying was done. Now it was time for action. Marcus came home around 3 in the afternoon. I heard his key in the lock, the front door, opening, his footsteps in the hallway. He called out, cheerful and unconcerned, "Mom, I am back." I did not answer. He walked toward the kitchen, probably expecting to find me cooking or reading, doing the normal things I always did. Instead, he found me sitting at the table waiting for him, the screenshots laid out in front of me like evidence at a trial. He stopped in the doorway. I watched his face carefully. The smile faded. Confusion flickered across his features, then recognition, then fear. "Sit down," I said quietly. He did not move. "Mom, what is this?" "Sit down, Marcus." My voice was steady, cold. I barely recognized it as my own. He walked slowly to the table and sat across from me. His eyes darted to the screenshots, then back to my face. He knew. He knew exactly what this was. "Did you take money from my lockbox?" I asked. I wanted to hear him say it, wanted to give him one last chance to be honest with me. "No, Mom, I did not, I swear." The lie came easily, automatically. He looked me right in the eyes and lied without hesitation. I picked up my phone, opened the camera app, selected one of the videos, and turned the screen toward him. I pressed play. We both watched as past Marcus walked into my bedroom, opened the lockbox, and removed money. When the clip ended, I set the phone down on the table between us. "Do you want to try that answer again?" I asked. His face had gone pale. He opened his mouth, closed, it opened it again. No words came out. For the first time in our entire conversation, he looked genuinely afraid. "Why?" I asked. My voice cracked on the word, all my careful composure breaking. "Why did you steal from me, Marcus? If you needed money, why did you not just ask? Have I ever said no to you? Have I ever denied you anything you needed?" He stared down at the table. "I did not think you would find out." That answer, so blunt and thoughtless, made me feel sick. "That is not what I asked. I asked why you did it." "I needed money," he mumbled. "For what? For coffee? For going out with friends? For fun?" My voice was rising now, anger breaking through. I worked double shifts to put you through college. I have given you everything I have, and you could not even respect me enough to not steal from me in my own home. He flinched. I am sorry. Are you really sorry, Marcus? Or are you just sorry you got caught? I picked up my phone again, found the video of him with Kyle. Let me show you something else. I played the clip. We both listened as video Marcus bragged about how easy it was to steal from me, how I trusted him too much, how I would never suspect him. I watched my son's face as he heard his own words played back to him. Shame finally registered in his expression, but it was too little too late. When the video ended, I set the phone down. That is what you really think of me, is it not? I am just stupid Beulah working herself to death, too blind to see what her son is really like. Mom, I did not mean it like that. I was just trying to sound cool in front of Kyle. I did not mean any of it. You meant enough of it to keep stealing. You meant enough of it to laugh about it. I took a shaky breath. Do you have any idea how much you have hurt me? He started to cry then, real tears, not the manipulative kind. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I will pay it all back. I promise. Just please do not hate me. I looked at my son, 23 years old, crying across the kitchen table, and I felt a complicated tangle of emotions. Love because he was still my child. Heartbreak because he had destroyed something precious. Anger because sorry was not enough. And determination because I knew what I had to do next, even though it would hurt. Sorry is not enough, Marcus, I said quietly. There have to be consequences. That night, I did not sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about what needed to happen next. Marcus had gone to his room after our confrontation, had not come out for dinner, had not spoken to me again. Part of me wanted to go to him, comfort him the way I had when he was a little boy with a scraped knee or a bad dream. But I knew that impulse, that desperate need to make everything okay for him, was part of the problem. I had protected him from discomfort his entire life. It was time he learned that actions have consequences. By morning, I had a plan. It was not a plan I wanted to implement. It was going to hurt both of us. But it was necessary. I waited until Marcus came downstairs around 10. He looked terrible, eyes red and swollen, face pale. He mumbled a good morning without looking at me. I told him to sit down. We needed to talk. He sat at the kitchen table, hands folded in front of him, head down, the picture of remorse. I sat across from him and laid out my decision. You are 23 years old, I began. You are an adult. You graduated college, which I paid for. You have been living here rent-free, eating my food, using my electricity and water, all while stealing money from me. That ends today. He looked up, eyes wide. These are your options. I continued, keeping my voice steady. You have 1 month. In that month, you need to find a job. Any job. I do not care if it is flipping burgers or stocking shelves. You will work and you will start paying rent. $300 a month, which is far less than you would pay anywhere else. You will also pay me back every cent you stole. I estimate it is around $400, but we will go through the camera footage together and get an exact amount. Mom, I held up my hand. I'm not finished. You will also contribute to groceries and utilities. And you will treat this house and me with respect. No more closed doors, no more secrets, no more lies. If you cannot do these things, if you refuse or fail to follow through, then you will move out. Do you understand? His face crumpled. You would kick me out. The question pierced my heart, but I did not let it show. I do not want to, but I will if I have to. You are an adult, Marcus. You need to act like one. But I do not have any money. How am I supposed to find a place? That is not my problem. You should have thought about that before you stole from me. The words came out harsher than I intended, but I meant them. You have 1 month. That is more than generous. What you do with that time is up to you. He sat there, stunned, tears streaming down his face. Please, Mom, I will change. I swear I will. Just do not make me leave. Then prove it. Find a job. Start taking responsibility for your life. Show me that you understand how serious this is. He nodded, wiping his face with his sleeve. I will. I promise I will. I wanted to believe him. Every maternal instinct in my body wanted to reach across the table, take his hand, tell him it would all be okay. But I stayed where I was, kept my expression firm. This was the hardest thing I had ever done. Harder than any night shift, harder than raising him alone, harder than anything. But it was necessary. Over the next few days, I could see Marcus struggling with the new reality. He was not used to being held accountable, not used to facing actual consequences. He stayed in his room a lot, emerging only for meals, speaking to me in brief, awkward sentences. The easy warmth that had always existed between us was gone, replaced by tension and uncertainty. I called Diane and told her everything about the camera footage, about the confrontation, about the ultimatum I had given Marcus. She listened, and when I finished, she said something that made me cry all over again. I am proud of you, she said. I know how hard that must have been. But you did the right thing. You are teaching him something crucial. You are teaching him that love does not mean tolerating mistreatment. Her words stayed with me. I repeated them to myself when doubt crept in, when I wondered if I was being too harsh, too unforgiving. Love does not mean tolerating mistreatment. I had to remember that. The first week was the hardest. Marcus went through the motions of job hunting, but I could tell his heart was not in it. He would sit at his laptop for an hour, fill out one application, then give up. When I asked how it was going, he would shrug, say, the job market was tough, he was trying. I did not push, I just reminded him of the deadline. The second week something shifted. Maybe he realized I was serious. Maybe the deadline suddenly felt real. He started applying to more places, following up on applications, going to interviews. He came home from one interview, looking frustrated, said they wanted someone with more experience. Another place never called him back. Another rejected him after the first interview. I could see the defeat settling over him, the realization that finding work was harder than he expected. The third week, he finally got a call back. A retail store at the mall was hiring for seasonal help. The pay was not great, barely above minimum wage, but it was a job. Marcus went to the interview on a Thursday afternoon. When he came home, he told me he got it. He would start the following Monday. I saw something in his eyes when he told me. Not pride exactly, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. He was going to work. He was going to earn his own money. It was a small step, but it was a step. Marcus started his new job the following week. He had to be at the store by 9 in the morning, which meant waking up early, something he had always hated. The first few days he came home exhausted, complaining about standing all day, about difficult customers, about how hard retail was. I listened, offered sympathy, but did not rescue him. He had to learn to handle this on his own. At the end of his first 2 weeks, Marcus got his first paycheck. It was not much after taxes, barely enough to cover the rent I was charging him. He came home that Friday evening, paycheck in hand, and stood in the kitchen, looking at it, like he could not quite believe it was real. That night he came to me with an envelope. Inside was $300 in cash, his rent for the month, and an additional $40. It is not all of it, he said quietly. But it is a start. I will pay you back, Mom. All of it. I promise. I took the envelope, looked at the money, then at my son. He looked different somehow. Older maybe, more tired but also more grounded. I nodded. Thank you, I said simply. He stood there for a moment, shifting his weight from foot to foot, clearly wanting to say something more. Finally he spoke. I really am sorry. For everything. I know sorry does not fix it, but I need you to know I mean it. I looked at him, at this young man I had raised, who had hurt me so deeply, who was now trying, however imperfectly, to make things right. I know, I said. That night Marcus did not disappear into his room right after dinner. He stayed in the kitchen, helped me wash dishes. We did not talk much, but the silence was less heavy than it had been in weeks. It was not the easy companionship we used to share, not yet. Maybe it never would be. But it was something. a small opening, a possibility of rebuilding. The months that followed were not easy. Healing rarely is. Marcus continued working at the retail store, picking up extra shifts when he could slowly paying back the money he had stolen. Some weeks he could only afford $20 or $30. Other weeks, when he got more hours, he gave me 50 or 60. I kept a record of it all, not because I did not trust him, but because we both needed to see the progress, to see him taking responsibility. Our relationship changed in fundamental ways. The blind trust I used to have was gone, and it would not be coming back. But in its place, slowly, carefully, something new started to grow. A different kind of relationship, one based not on me giving and Marcus taking, but on mutual respect, on honesty, on accountability. I also started to change. I realized that I had lost myself in being Marcus's mother. For over 2 decades, my entire identity had been wrapped up in him, in his needs, his future, his happiness. I had forgotten how to exist as just Beulah, a person with my own interests, my own life, my own worth separate from my child. I started taking better care of myself. I joined a yoga class on Saturday mornings, something I never would have done before, because I always felt I needed to be available for Marcus. I started having lunch with Diane more regularly, going to movies I wanted to see, reading books that interested me. I started reclaiming the parts of myself I had set aside. One evening, about 6 months after everything happened, Marcus came home from work and found me in the garden. I had started planting vegetables, something my mother used to do that I had always meant to try, but never had time for. He stood at the edge of the garden bed watching me work for a moment. "Can I help?" he asked. I looked up surprised. "Do you want to?" He shrugged. "Yeah, if that is okay." I handed him a trowel and showed him how to plant the tomato seedlings I had bought that morning. We worked together in comfortable silence, our hands in the dirt, the late afternoon sun warm on our backs. It was peaceful, simple, real. After a while, Marcus spoke. "I have been thinking a lot about what happened, about what I did. I kept working, did not respond, giving him space to continue. I was so angry after graduation," he said quietly. "All my friends had job offers lined up, and I had nothing. I felt like a failure. And I took it out on you because you were safe. I knew you would always be there, always forgive me, always take care of me. So I used that. I used your love against you. And that was the worst thing I have ever done." I sat back on my heels, looked at him. His eyes were wet. "I do not expect you to ever trust me like you used to," he continued. "I know I destroyed that, but I want you to know that I am not the person I was 6 months ago. This job, having to work for what I have, having to take care of myself, it changed me. I understand now what you tried to teach me, that I am not entitled to anything just because I exist. That respect has to be earned, that love is not a free pass to treat people badly." I reached over and put my hand on his shoulder. "I see the changes, Marcus. I do. And I am proud of you for making them." He looked at me, hope flickering in his expression. "Do you think we will ever be okay again? You and me?" I thought about his question carefully before answering. "We will never be what we were before. That relationship is gone. But I think we can build something new, something better maybe, something more honest." He nodded slowly. "I would like that." We went back to planting, working side by side as the sun sank lower in the sky. The tomato seedlings went into the ground, one by one, fragile, but full of potential, just like our relationship. Time would tell if they would thrive. Over the following weeks, Marcus and I had more conversations, real ones where we both spoke honestly about our feelings, our fears, our hopes. He told me about the pressure he had felt to be perfect, to live up to the image I had of him. I told him about the loneliness of single motherhood, the fear that I was not enough, the tendency to overcompensate by giving too much. We were learning each other again, not as mother and perfect son, but as two flawed people trying to do better. Marcus found a better job eventually, one that used his degree with a small marketing firm. The pay was better, and he moved into his own apartment about 8 months after our confrontation. I helped him move carried boxes up 3 flights of stairs, helped him arrange furniture. When everything was in place and I was about to leave, he hugged me tight. "Thank you," he whispered into my shoulder, "for not giving up on me, for making me grow up." I hugged him back, blinking away tears. "You did the growing up, sweetheart. I just stopped standing in your way." Life continued. Marcus came over for dinner every week, sometimes twice a week. He paid off the last of the money he owed me and insisted on taking me out to celebrate a nice dinner at a restaurant I had always wanted to try. We sat across from each other talking and laughing, and I marveled at how far we had come. The camera in my bedroom still works. I could check it anytime I want, but I do not. Not because I trust blindly like I used to, but because I have learned that real trust is not about certainty. It is about believing in someone's capacity to change, to learn, to be better. Marcus proved he could do those things. Not perfectly, not all at once, but steadily, genuinely. I also learned something crucial about myself. I learned that I matter, that my needs, my boundaries, my dignity are important. I spent so many years believing that being a good mother meant sacrificing everything, putting myself last, giving until there was nothing left. But that was not strength. It was self-abandonment. Real strength is knowing when to say enough, when to demand respect, when to choose yourself without guilt. The deepest wounds often teach the most valuable lessons. Marcus's betrayal shattered me, but it also freed me. It freed me from the prison of limitless giving, from the exhausting role of perfect martyr mother. It taught me that I could set boundaries and still be loving, that I could hold my son accountable and still be his mother, that I could choose my own well-being and still be a good person. If you are going through something similar, if someone you love has betrayed your trust, please hear this. You deserve respect. You deserve honesty. You deserve to be valued, not used. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to let them face the consequences of their choices. Growth happens in discomfort. Change happens when staying the same is no longer an option. I do not know what the future holds for Marcus and me. Our relationship will always carry the weight of what happened. But it also carries the beauty of what we built afterward. We are both different now, both stronger in our own ways. The trust we share now is harder, one more precious, because it was earned rather than assumed. Maybe that is the lesson life wanted to teach me. That unconditional love does not mean unconditional tolerance. That faith in someone should not require me to ignore my own worth. That the people who truly love us will respect our boundaries, not resent them. I look at my life now, at the small joys I have carved out for myself, at the relationship I have rebuilt with my son, at the strength I discovered in my darkest moment. And I feel something unexpected. Gratitude. Not for the pain itself, but for what it revealed, what it changed, what it taught me about my own value. So before we end, let me ask you this. Have you ever had to set a difficult boundary with someone you love? How did you find the strength to do what was necessary, even when it broke your heart? Share your story in the comments. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe. Sharing this video might help someone else find the courage to choose themselves without guilt. Thank you for listening to my story, for taking this journey with me through heartbreak and healing. I hope it reminds you that you are worthy of respect, that your boundaries matter, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to accept less than you deserve. Take care of yourselves, and remember that the deepest wounds can lead to the most profound growth.